Hello everyone, I'm Richard Mansell. I'm a translator from Spanish and Catalan, and I'm here today to talk about an excellent book, Feliç by Nicolau Dols, published in Catalan in 2020 by Godall, and it will be published in English in the US and UK by Jantar in November 2026. I'm the translator of the book, and so we'll also have a few readings in the event today. And in fact, let's start with the reading. For this first one, I'll read it in Catalan first and then in English. For all the others, we'll just have the translation and a bit of comment in between. So this is poem 9 from the first section of the book, Sapiensals, which is wisdom. So here we go. El ple més senzill, el sol ple, cada dia del món que t'acompanyi. El perfum de la pluja de l'agost, el so dels grills brodant un vel de fosca i un frec suau de seda de bedoll que t'ompli de calfreds la pell de l'ànima. Feliç aquell qui troba en cada cosa les arrels poderoses del que és bell i bo i necessari i en gaudeix. That is the Catalan. This is the English. Poem 9. May the most simple pleasure, the single pleasure be with you, every day in this world. The scent of falling August rain, the sound of crickets weaving dark veils, and the gossamer touch of birchwood bark, sending shivers to the depths of your soul. Happy is he who finds in all things the powerful roots of what is beautiful and good and right, and from them draws joy. The title of this event is Translating Happiness, and that is a lot more difficult than it might seem. You see, in Catalan, there are two different words for happiness. We don't have equivalents for both of them, or rather, we don't have different words in English for both of them. We have Feliç, the title of the book, but we also have content. If you are asked by someone if you are happy, especially happy about a situation, you tend to go for content. Feliç is something a little bit stronger than that. So I actually went to the dictionary to have a look. I am a translator. I absolutely love dictionaries. For content, we've got in the Catalan definition to be grandment satisfet, alegre. So largely satisfied in there. Whereas when you look up Feliç, it sends you to felicitat, the noun for happiness. And it talks about it as an estat de l'ànim plenament satisfet, a state of mind where you are wholly satisfied. Feliç, as the title for the book, is about something beyond just happiness as a temporary idea, a temporary state. It is about almost a balance with everything around you. You'll notice that we're outside for the talk. Nature is an important part of the book as well. To say that there are two different words in Catalan and that we don't have different words in English doesn't mean that we can't translate happiness, but rather, in translating words, in translating ideas, we also need to think about everything around it, everything that it connects with. It is this wonderful complexity of language and of literature, of course, written in language, which I adore as a translator, and which I have adored translating this work through many, many, many drafts. I won't tell you how many, but there are a lot, and folders of papers in my filing cabinet dealing with these. There's also one thing that I'd just like to comment on with happy. You'll have noticed before that I said happy is he. Normally, in my usage of language, of course, I always want to be inclusive. But throughout the 22 poems of the first section of Feliç, there is Feliç aquell starting the final tercet, the final three-line stanza of each poem. And it does use the masculine in Catalan. And of course, it is Nicolau Dols as a male poet who is writing this. The poems are written in the second person largely, and so the poet is addressing the reader, yes, but I think he's addressing himself as well. That aquell is definitely, for me, as I read it, Nicolau as the poet as well. And so I do think it's important for that. Of course, there is the reference to the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatus Ille as well. And so there is a history, a tradition, yes, of using he. A tradition that we might want to challenge, and definitely in other circumstances we would challenge. But here I do think that the male, staying with the male there, is important, as I say, because of Nicolau as a poet. We'll now have another reading, and this one is poem 12. One of these days you will open a drawer, and you will be assailed by the moths, gnawing away at the memories you keep. Bright days full of joy, smiles with nothing more to say, and even the keys to your defeat. Happy is he who lives day by day, who has himself and nothing more, since he has won all there is to win. I love books. I love reading. I love reading in different languages. I'm very lucky to be able to read in Spanish and in Catalan, as well as in English, and so have multiple different literary traditions that I can immerse myself in. As a translator, I'm often looking for books as well that I want to be able to pitch, books that I can get behind, books that I love, and I can tell publishers that I love them. And so the story of how we discover these books, I find fascinating. And the story of how I discovered this book, or rather how I came to be the translator of this book, is a great one. It actually began with going to Nicolau's house. I was on a research project in Mallorca for a few weeks, and he'd invited me over for lunch, and I actually had taken my bike with me because I'm a keen cyclist. And I cycled over the island into Umbrach, the town where he lives, in the mountains. And we were having lunch and chatting. And at one point he said, "Oh, have you seen my book of poetry?" And I said, "Well, I know it exists, but I've not seen it." And he brought down a copy. And there and then, not only did he give me the copy, but he dedicated a poem to me in the book. And so there we have the dedication. Per enrich totes les felicitats, Colau. For rich with all happiness, Colau. That poem is poem 9, the first one that I read you. And I read that poem first, and then I read the whole book, and I loved it. I loved the ideas behind it and some of the ideas that we'll go into later in the event, some of the themes through the book. And with poem 9, I found it special. And we had an event through my work at university where I teach, where we were hoping to produce some videos for National Poetry Day in the UK. And I thought, well, not just poetry, how about translated poetry as well? So I translated that poem for National Poetry Day, made a video, we posted it on social media, and it got a good amount of attention, including attention from one publisher, Michael Tate at Jantar. When he saw it, we got in touch, and he said if I had a few more translated poems from it, if I would like to pitch the book to him. So I translated a few more and pitched the book to Mike, and he loved it. And that is how the whole story began. That was back in 2023 when everything started. Now it is 2026. Publishing, translation can be a slow process, but slow is not a derogatory term there. And that's something that we'll look at in our next section. However, before then, one more reading. This is poem 17. Turn back and call on the man you were. There is no need for it to be often. Just those days that seem to be your last. Hopeless, defenseless, dark days. But do not hurry to mark out the way. Be by yourself. Smile. Say nothing. Happy is he who can forgive himself, and in the darkest nights can see his own smile, and knows that is enough. I mentioned that you can think of Feliç and Happy as a slow book, and as the process of translation, a slow process of translation. And I said it's not in a derogatory manner. Here I'm thinking of the slow food movement, for example. I'm thinking of Carl Honoré's book, In Praise of Slow, in praise of slowing down, that modern life can be too fast, and we lose so much on the way if we do not slow down and take account of everything around us. Some of the poems so far, you might have noted, are not about a kind of overt, superficial happiness, but rather about an appreciation, about a kind of balance with nature around us, with life around us. And that becomes one of the roots of happiness, even when times are hard. The second section of the book is The Wind in the Pines, and these adopt the Lushi, classical Chinese form, into Catalan, and then, of course, the translations of these are into English. And poem 1 from this section, the Lushi, exemplifies this slowness in a rather touching way, I feel. Poem 1. A half-drunk cup, a half-made bed, a half-read book face down on the side. The curtains float to wave goodbye. The wind blows to end the morning. Emptiness still echoes around the room. Leaves now hide the past. I'll take today slowly, a little music, a stroll to head back to myself. In thinking of slowness, I'm thinking of enjoyment. I'm thinking of the enjoyment of poetry. I'm thinking in terms of translation, the enjoyment of language itself, the power of language, the power of everything that language can do, and understanding the differences between how languages do things as well. That is one of the wonderful things about translation, and one of the wonderful things about human translators as well, that human appreciation of what it is that humans do as well. A strong argument against the usage of AI in translation, I believe. So I'd like to do another reading as part of this section, and this is from poem 4 in Wisdom. A pencil glided over paper, leaving unexpected trails behind. A trembling shoulder, a glinting eye, a turning face, parted lips, and it traced a breath straight into the wind, like a burning tongue set alight with words. Happy is he who learns through names, how they sketch memories, how they plot the extent of desire, a longing for the world. That how he learns through names, it reminds me of reading Gabriel García Márquez, Cien Años de Soledad, how at the beginning there is that godlike power of giving names to things. There's that same wonderful depth of appreciation of learning through names as well, learning through language, what things are. And this is learning a foreign language as well, learning those new words. I'm not going to say that it's powerful in the sense of gaining power over people, but powerful in terms of understanding another way of seeing the world. Different languages see the world differently from the start of this, with two kinds of happiness in Catalan. There are many different ways of seeing the world, indeed as many as people, and it's that appreciation of the human that I do think is key. During the translation of Feliç, I was very lucky to be awarded a translation residency by the Institut Ramon Llull, which meant that I could stay for 3 weeks at the Universitat Autònoma in Barcelona. In fact, not in Barcelona, but just in the hills behind Barcelona, the Collserola Mountains. So if you're ever in Barcelona and look at those hills surrounding the city, just behind there. This gave me time to be able to concentrate on the translation. And in fact, what I really wanted to do was to be able to read the work out loud. Poetry should reflect language, how we use it. So it should feel natural. It should not feel forced. I get immensely grumpy when things such as ly adverbs in English easily get their stress put on the final syllable and then people rhyme it with something where it's not a full rhyme. That tension that gets put into the verses, that shouldn't be there in poetry. Now, I had a particular problem in talking about rhyme, which is the third section of the book. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be able to spend time on this section and read out loud and get the natural flows of English language. The third section is sonnets. And of course, we know that the sonnet form tends to rhyme in English. Now, the sonnet form itself is actually quite difficult to translate. The sonnet form came about through translation. We have the Petrarchan sonnets, and it was through translation that they came into English. Translating brings in new elements. Translation is creation. Without translation, we would not have literary evolution. I'd already done drafts. There was a draft of the whole book, but I'd done drafts of all of the sonnets, and around about half of them I had translated with rhyme, with A, B, B, A rhymes. And I wasn't happy with them. I wasn't happy with them at all. They were very well-formed sonnets written in iambic pentameter with the rhyme scheme that they needed for sonnets, but I felt they were bad poems. Just because something rhymes doesn't mean that it works. That rhyme is something extra. It's tying ideas together at the end of a line. It's putting focus on particular elements. And that is an extra constraint in translating. It was forcing me away from how the poem needed to be expressed. And in fact, I was reminded of Milton, John Milton, the author of Paradise Lost, who, talking about rhyme, said, now I remembered this as being a lot ruder than he actually was. It's still quite an insulting thing about rhyme. And to be clear, I do like rhyme when rhyme is done well. It's poor rhyme that I don't like. But Milton, talking about rhyme in his prologue to Paradise Lost, said, rhyme being no necessary adjunct or true ornament of poem or good verse, in longer works especially, but the invention of a barbarous age to set off wretched matter and lame metre, graced indeed since by the use of some famous modern poets, carried away by custom, but much to their own vexation, hindrance and constraint. This is the key bit. To express many things otherwise, and for the most part, worse than else they would have expressed them. When you're a translator, you are starting from somebody else's poem and translating poetry. The poem needs to work in English as well. And as I said, I want to express it naturally in English. I do not want to express it worse than else I would have expressed those ideas without rhyme. So in reading out the Catalan, in reading out my English, I just realised rhyme is killing these sonnets. There is also plenty of a tradition in English of non-rhyming sonnets. In fact, there's tradition of this in Spanish and Catalan as well, but that's not something that I'll go into now. If you do want to look at the tradition of the sonnet in English, the Penguin Book of the Sonnet is an absolutely wonderful work, a history from the start and the translations of Petrarchan sonnets, even without sonnet form in the beginning, through to the most modern forms of the sonnet. And that includes, of course, poems without rhyme as well. So now I'd like to read one more of these, which will be from the final section, 7 Days of Serena, Day 5, Evening. This comes preceded with a quote from Ausiàs March, the great Valencian poet, the last of the troubadours, the first of the moderns, as he has been described. Because the quotes that preceded the poems in Catalan weren't translated in the Catalan, I haven't translated this here either. But I will read it for you in Catalan, the preceding quote, and then the poem. So, Day 5, Evening. Grans e pocs peixs a records correran i cercaran amagatalls secrets, fugint al mar on són nodrits e fets de gran remei en terra eixiran. Just as the dead fish wash ashore, motionless, eyes dull, scales grey, so too a serene voice lies dormant, shrouding memories of you. A starfish gives one final effort to inscribe in sea salt script the old words of water and the waves, craving comforts from long ago. When faces on the altar fade, I see how sad it is to ask those same dead fish, please look for her. Salt begins to rust tomorrow, and for you, for just one word, I cast my nets to sea once more. I've mentioned a few times already that translation is a creative act. When we write a translation, we are writing a new text for a new time, for a new place, for a new audience. I've also mentioned the importance of the human translator and that interpretation in the translation. And there's a nice anecdote from a translation of this book that exemplifies this rather well, I think. So I mentioned that the third section of the book is a series of sonnets, 7 Days of Serena. In the Catalan, and indeed in the English as well, it is preceded by a sonnet in Italian by Petrarch. So we have Petrarch's sonnet there. And it gets the title Alpha in the Catalan. Then, at the end of the sonnet cycle, we have Nicolau's translation of that Petrarchan sonnet, and it gets the title Amiga. When I was talking to Nicolau about the process of translating the sonnets, and this was when I was still not in the happiest place in terms of the rhyme and the form, I said, and then there's your translation of the Petrarchan sonnet, which gives me even more problems because I've got even more constraints. And he said, just find one of the English translations of the Petrarchan sonnet. And I said, no. I'm not translating Petrarch's sonnet. I'm translating your translation of Petrarch's sonnet. And that is exactly what I did. And so following the same format that I had with the previous ones, so not using rhyme, I didn't use rhyme there either. In terms of meter, I'll let you work out exactly how that works. I don't want to overanalyze all of it now. The important thing is that it does work as natural language in English. And so let's read that one. So this is Amiga, translated by me from Godall's translation of Petrarch. A nice little game of mirrors there showing how translation works in this chain of creation through translation as well. Amiga. My angel, my serene goddess, is now so cruelly snatched away. My soul is tortured. Horror blinds me. I grasp at words to soothe my grief. The pain that drags me here is just. She knew it, and love knows it too. My heart contained no better cure for the relentless pain of life. And this, O death, you wrenched from me. And you, O happy earth, hold her so close to you and far from me. So where am I now, crushed and blinded, since that loving, sweet and radiant sunlight is no longer by my side? This event is part of Sant Jordi in New York City, which of course is an international literary festival. But it does have perhaps its heart or perhaps its roots in the Catalan tradition. Sant Jordi is St. George. St. George is the patron saint of England, where I am here, and of course the patron saint of Catalonia. There is the wonderful tradition of giving your beloved a book and a rose on St. George's Day, a book to signify wisdom, a rose to signify beauty. And so I do want to say that I feel there is something special about Catalan literature. It's not just my opinion. We can go to Mario Vargas Llosa, the Nobel Prize in Literature laureate, who said about Duran lo Blanc, the great Catalan medieval novel, and indeed about its author, Joan Martorell. Martorell is the first of that line of god supplanters. Fielding, Balzac, Tolstoy, Joyce, Faulkner, who aimed to create in their novels a total reality. The history of Catalan literature is long. It was being formed at the same time as the other great European literatures. It is at the level of the other great European literatures. But there is something special about it as well. And it's hard to put your finger on. It's not something tangible. I can't say that there is some sort of formula for it. What I can say is that there is a care taken over it and a love for it from its readers and from the population. That relationship between the people, the language, and the literature that language is used to create is something that I've found quite special and that I've been lucky enough to be included into and immersed in as well. It's not just Vargas Llosa who has positive opinion of Catalan literature and writers as well. We could also look at Harold Bloom, for example, who, talking of Catalonia, says there are several different Catalonias. Ramon Llull's Mallorca, Ausias Marc's Valencia, Salvador Espriu's Barcelona. And he adds to this, few people are as devoted to the best of their imaginative literature as are the Catalans. Barcelona is a city of cities, like New York, Rome, and Paris, and resembles them most in being a city of imagination. There is something special about the place. For Sant Jordi in Barcelona, all of the booksellers will be bringing their books out onto the street. It is a huge book festival. There is something special about literature and place. And I've said Barcelona, but I'll say Mallorca as well. I was very lucky enough to learn my Catalan on Mallorca at the university in Mallorca, and I was lucky to be immersed in the island's culture and welcomed by the people of the island as well. There is something very special about it. Now, that perhaps is a topic for another event, for another time, but there is one last reading that I would like to leave you with, that in fact is from the start of Feliç. It's from poem 2 in Wisdom, but it links place so wonderfully and describes a Mallorcan place so wonderfully that I think I'd like to leave you with this. Poem 2. You were open-mouthed beneath the surface of the water. Seagrass meadows, starfish, sand, sponges, a flash of lightning in the water, the sky, beyond the beyond. The moon, the wind, the waves, or your body. Will we ever know where reflections begin? Happy is he who sees as in his eyes the instant when the world became clear and the sky cracked open from side to side.